The infamous 401k or retirement account is the American middle class's favorite wealth tool. Yet, does it actually bring people freedom? One person never actualizes and rationalizes that through the lens of one day I'll live the life I was meant to live. And the other person fundamentally rejects that idea and says, screw that. I'm going to take control of my life today. I'm going to focus on self-actualization today. And I do not buy into or acknowledge the trap that society has laid out for me to lull me to sleep with just enough perks that I don't revolt or wake up from the slumber that I've been walking throughout my life with. And the retirement game, the aspect of focusing on your retirement and tomorrow, is just a microcosm of a deeper spiritual issue. You didn't come here to slowly accumulate material fiat debt notes so that you can hopefully relax in a few decades. That makes zero sense for anyone with even an ounce of spiritual intelligence or awareness. We know all of that. What's going on, guys? We're going to be doing a $500 giveaway. Watch until the end of this video. After you've watched the video, drop a meaningful comment and we will be randomly selecting one comment as the winner. The winner will be announced 1 week from the day this video drops. So next Monday, we will randomly choose a comment on it, ask you for your email so that we can send you your $500 reward. We wholeheartedly appreciate each and every one of your continued support on our channel and our podcast, and that is why we like to do giveaways like this, to give back to you guys. Wish you the best of luck. Peace and love. I want to start this video off by defining wealth and really challenging the underlying assumptions baked into the notion of freedom at a level of depth that we genuinely do this topic justice. This is not going to be some surface level video about the Matrix. This is going to be a fair, balanced, honest video from someone who sees all sides of the argument here and once went 90% of the way through with the process of setting up, funding, and investing through retirement accounts, and venturing down a completely different path to freedom than the one that God ended up redirecting me onto. So, freedom, it's a big word, it's a common word, and it's also a word that far too few of us have taken the time and the space to truly sit with and properly define in the context of our own life. What is freedom? There's spiritual freedom, there's time freedom, there's emotional freedom, there's decision-making freedom, there's location freedom, there's kinesthetic freedom, there's intellectual freedom, sexual freedom, financial freedom. The list goes on. So it's important we clarify which freedom we're talking about. Today, we're going to hone in on two main areas of freedom: time freedom and financial freedom, or what you could call freedom in the 3D material world. It's what most of us are chasing, whether consciously or unconsciously, whether we admit it, whether we deny it, whether we own it, or whether we suppress it. So it's probably worth talking more about, isn't it? Let me tell you a quick story before we get into it. When I was 24, I had just about managed to pay off all $50,000 of debt that I had graduated college with. And I was finally able to start saving just about 100% of every dollar that I was making towards my future. It was an exciting time. I'll never forget the feeling of knowing that I was no longer simply working for money to pay down my debt. I was now actually building a financial future. Around this time, I was starting to put solid intention into exploring the highest good options for my future in regards to wealth creation, while mitigating taxes as much as humanly possible. I wasn't yet privy to the knowledge that I now embody and teach for a living, but I happened to come across this unorthodox financial book called Killing Sacred Cows, which really altered my paradigm at the time. But before I share what this book opened my eyes to, allow me to give you a bit more background in what had just recently transpired in my life. I had literally just sat down with my mom's fiduciary advisor to learn all about self-employment IRAs, often referred to as SEP IRAs, as I wasn't an employee and I didn't want a typical Roth. And so I sit down with the guy and he proceeds to educate me on all of the life-changing benefits of a self-employment IRA. The main selling point was all centered around compound interest. I'm sure you've heard it before. To paraphrase him, you're barely 24, son. If you simply allocate $250 a month for the next 20 years and never miss a payment, you'll have a few million by the time you're 65. I was young, I was hungry, and I had my whole life ahead of me. It seemed like not a half bad strategy. So I went ahead and signed some papers. I submitted my forms and voila, my first SEP IRA was set up. I remember receiving the letter in the mail a few weeks later with all of my documents and instructions of how to set up my brokerage and create my accounts online so that I could get started immediately. And I remember distinctly just setting it off to the side, which is very unlike me. I do not put things off that are in the best interest of my freedom. And that's important to understand in the context of this story. But nonetheless, I found myself facing some sort of internal, invisible resistance to funding this damn account. Even though I was literally starting to have cash pile up and saving it in a shoebox in my room. So this book, Killing Sacred Cows, comes into my awareness, and I have no idea what it's about. But for whatever reason, my unconscious mind leads me to just buy this book. I didn't even know what a sacred cow was at that time, by the way. I've since come to learn that sacred cows are commonly held beliefs, almost like cliches or societal norms, which is pretty funny. God has a sense of humor for sure. So I'm reading this book and it starts talking about the difference between cash flow and wealth, and how the wealthy, the 1%, have truly mastered cash flow rather than trying to optimize for an arbitrary net worth dollar amount at the end of their life. Now, this is such a simple concept, but it turned my world upside down. You have to realize that up until this time in my life, the way I had managed to pay off my car, pay off my student loan debt, about $50,000 in a matter of 2 years or so, was by getting my expenses so low that even though I wasn't making more than a few $1,000s a month, I was able to save almost 100% of it and then use it to pay down my debt in sizable chunks. This mindset was necessary at that time in my life, but it resulted in me having a fundamental financial view of the world that was rooted in scarcity and limitation. I genuinely thought that the way that I was going to go from ground zero, like having just broke even, no more debt, but no savings, to a multi-millionaire who's completely financially free for the rest of his life, was by saving almost every dollar I made and maybe investing some of it along the way while keeping my expenses extremely low for the best 4 decades of my life. I was willing to outpatience my lower drives and delay gratification for 40 plus years so that I could end up with millions when it's all said and done, hopefully. And then this book comes along, and this book challenges my entire worldview on how I was going to reach financial freedom. And maybe this is an opportunity for you to reflect on what is your current worldview on how you think you're going to reach financial freedom. The author went on to talk about how the wealthy are wealthy not just because of their net worth or their cash flow, but because they're able to enjoy life today, not tomorrow. Damn, that hit me. I had never met someone who lived in a way where they were enjoying life today. I had only seen cases of people not enjoying life, hoping one day to enjoy life. And this is really when God slapped me across the face. And I, for the first time in my life, gained real higher level clarity on what freedom really is. So I hope you are listening right now, because this might be one of the most important videos that I've ever put out. So pay attention. Freedom, in the material sense of the word, is being able to do or create what you want, with who you want, how you want, however often you want. That is true material freedom. And that is what I was wholeheartedly committed to experiencing, no matter what it took. Now, let's revisit the beginning of this video when I said it's crucial that we first define freedom. Freedom is not money. Freedom is not assets. Freedom is not a few $1,000,000 in a retirement account. Freedom is being able to do or create what you want, with who you want, when you want, however often you want. I want you to really think about that. You see, up until this moment, I didn't actually understand freedom. And if you're actively playing the retirement game, as I call it, you may not either. If you're watching this video right now, there's an extremely high probability that you're currently running the retirement algorithm in your unconscious mind. And the retirement algorithm is so much deeper than whether or not you have an IRA or whether or not you're focusing on cash flow or savings. So please do not misconstrue the depth of my message. What I am talking about will fundamentally dictate the path that you take during this life. One person never actualizes and rationalizes that through the lens of one day I'll live the life I was meant to live. And the other person fundamentally rejects that idea and says, screw that. I'm going to take control of my life today. I'm going to focus on self-actualization today. And I do not buy into or acknowledge the trap that society has laid out for me to lull me to sleep with just enough perks that I don't revolt or wake up from the slumber that I've been walking throughout my life with. And the retirement game, the aspect of focusing on your retirement and tomorrow, is just a microcosm of a deeper spiritual issue. I thought, just like you probably do, that freedom meant I needed a certain amount of millions in the bank, a certain house, a certain car, maybe a certain size business or investment portfolio, the ability to travel when I want. And if we're really going for it, maybe a yacht or a private jet to make those things that much easier. But all of those things are simply idealized, societally taught symptoms or potential uses of freedom. They are themselves not freedom. So we're now starting to peel back the layers and get closer to the root of the conversation. So let's keep going. I hope you're following along with me. If freedom is being able to create what I want, with who I want, when I want, however often I want, then we need to now analyze the underlying requirements that would be needed to experience this kind of reality. Creating what you want requires money. It requires resources. It requires creativity. It requires influence, intelligence, and connections, among other things. Creating with who you want requires quality relationships, influence, leadership ability, connections, among other things. Creating when you want requires that you have time freedom, autonomy over what you do and when, and autonomy over your schedule, among other things. And creating however often you want requires a little bit of all of the above. There's a time component, there's a relational component, and there's a money and resources component. Now, where the hell am I going with all of this? Well, my friends, you cannot solve a problem that you haven't first adequately defined. And freedom is not nearly as simple of a concept as we've been sold. And that is part of the trap. I am not being unnecessarily thorough right now. Failing to properly define freedom is why we've fallen into this 401k mess in the first place. Think about it. It sounds good if you don't really question what freedom is. Now, let's go a little bit deeper and tie this all in. We now have a framework or a lens through which we can use as a filter of sorts for any idea, vehicle, strategy, or wealth plan in order to see if it actually meets all of the criteria for creating a life of true freedom, or if it's misguided and unaligned. The infamous 401k or retirement account is the American middle class's favorite wealth tool. Yet, does it actually bring people freedom? Let's assess. Part 1 of our wealth definition, if you remember, creating what you want. Does sacrificing your money and the opportunity cost of what you would create or spend that money on today in hope of a better tomorrow, does that allow you to create what you want in your life? No, it doesn't. So that already disqualifies it, but we'll keep going. The dream we've been sold is that one day it will be worth it, right? Because it will eventually allow us to create what we want in life, right? Eventually we'll be able to do that, but no, we're not able to do that today. So let's move on to part 2. Part 2 of our wealth definition, if you recall, was about creating with who you want. Does investing your excess savings and cash flow into your retirement account to hopefully walk away with a few $1,000,000 at 65, does that allow you to dictate, curate, or influence who you create with in your life? No, it doesn't. Now, of course, you have some autonomy over who your friends are, who you marry, and these types of things. But outside of that, if you're being honest with yourself, you're spending the majority of your life cohabitating with people who you wouldn't choose to if money were no issue and this world was completely malleable to your greatest desires. You would be lying if you said that was not the case. For example, the way in which you likely currently earn income or make money to pay your bills is very likely not something that you're 100% in complete control of. You likely do not choose exactly how you make your money, what you work on, who your team or peers are, and how much proximity they have to you. And this is important to state because a huge reason why you put up with this reality is likely because of the carrot that is being dangled out in front of you. The enticing few $1,000,000 retirement at the end of the yellow brick road. That's what we're being sold. Now, moving on to part 3 of our wealth definition, creating when you want. Does investing your excess savings and cash flow into your retirement account until you're 65. Does that allow you to create when you want? Absolutely not. This, out of all 4 of our criteria, this is probably the most obvious one, as the very notion of working hard to max out your 401k or build your retirement account faster keeps you on the hamster wheel of sacrificing your time for money, aka the notion of future freedom. That's what most of us are working so hard for. That is why most of us fall into these traps in the first place. Now, on to part 4 of our wealth definition, creating not only what we want with whoever we want, when we want, but doing so however often we want. Now that is powerful. Through this lens, it's hopefully pretty obvious that you cannot create anything however often you want while taking the retirement account approach or having this program running in your operating system, because the very wealth strategy behind building up retirement accounts for a future payout or dream life is rooted in sacrificing doing what we actually want in the now. So instead we exchange today's happiness and fulfillment for tomorrow's fantasy. Now, I hope you all understand that I am not creating this video with any judgment towards anyone. We all have our own path. For some, this is their path, and that's just perfect. My intention in this video is simply to educate those of you who may be seeking a more aligned approach to true wealth, not the wealth that we've been sold that requires us to sacrifice today for tomorrow. And I also want to clarify that I am never speaking or judging or attacking the individual. I am a systems thinker. I am addressing systemic issues and systemic norms and addressing the ideology, analyzing it, and trying to decipher, is this a helpful approach, mindset, ideology, etc. That is what we're doing in this video. Now, it never made sense to me that I would sacrifice from, let's say, age 20 to, let's say, age 60, and then I would get to enjoy my payoff. Yet, at that age, who knows my health status and my ability to actually be present and truly enjoy the full experience of travel, luxury, bucket list items, and truly living like so many of us tell ourselves we will when we retire. My soul knew that there had to be a way to experience true freedom in all 4 of these areas without compromise. And I suppose in retrospect, this question and these seeds planted at age 24 may have been what eventually sprouted into finding the answers that I was looking for and coming into the work that I now do with families, which is quite unorthodox and challenges these societal presuppositions around what freedom and wealth planning should or can actually look like. So let's talk a little bit more directly about the 401k and retirement accounts in general. Why am I such an advocate for not using IRAs and retirement accounts? First, I want to clarify. I understand why employees feel it's a good idea to max them out and get employer matching and all of that. If you're going to remain in a job and your income is fixed, obviously your IRA is likely what you perceive to be your best chance at freedom. So you max it out, your employer matches that, and you do that every year. I also understand that it lowers your taxable income a bit. None of that is up for debate. I'm not questioning any of that. However, I am a macro systems thinker. So I am not so much concerned with any of the minutia as I am with the entire notion of what a 401k really is and why it's being offered to you. Have you ever thought about that? Why is this being pushed? People genuinely think IRAs are a wealth and freedom vehicle, and they simply are not. Unless, of course, you simply define freedom as, quote, eventually having enough money to stop working and hopefully afford to relax for the last 20 years of my life, end quote. If that is where your standards lie, and that's what you will look back on and consider a good life, then more power to you. This video is certainly not for you, so feel free to turn it off right away. For me, however, I intimately understand that tomorrow is never promised. And in today's society, it is extremely rare that you meet a 65-year-old who's completely mobile, healthy, active, has a thriving social life and friend group, and is still exploratory and adventurous. I hate to speak in generalities, but it's helpful for this point. By this age, the average person is usually a homebody. Your hips might hurt, your back probably hurts, your posture's probably not the best, and you can't be on your feet for too long without needing to sit down. Even if you live the healthiest lifestyle, the nature of human existence is chaos. We cannot control what happens in our lives. That's part of the beauty of it. So, as a 24-year-old, my logic was, why would I risk putting all of my eggs in this basket and centering my life around this one strategy and then having it not work out how I had planned on? That is a huge sacrifice given the risk to reward ratio. I would be devastated if I got there to the finish line and it didn't work out. Let's think about this for a second. If it works, you're 65, you and your partner are still healthy, and you have a few $1,000,000 to live somewhat comfortably without working. You can travel, you can now do whatever you please with hopefully whoever you please. Assuming, you have friends, they're not dead, they're also healthy, they're also retired, and everything worked out well for them. If it doesn't work, though, maybe you'll die before then, or become ill before then, or maybe you just simply don't age well. These are all pretty damn possible, right? And so you're 65 and you have this money, but in the pursuit of that money, you sacrificed your health and your vitality for it, and you can never get those years back. Or let's consider a different scenario. You remain in great health, but you're 65 now, and the economy and or your investments simply haven't transpired in your favor. And you don't end up with all that much money when it's all said and done, post taxes. So you can retire if you like, but you'll maybe have to move states to a state with no state taxes and a state that's a lot cheaper to live. And you'll definitely have to downgrade your lifestyle. All of that work, 40 fucking years to never experience freedom. You're 65 now. You're a grandparent, and you're looking in the mirror and looking at your life. And what do you have to show for it? You are still unable to create or do whatever your soul might desire because your wealth isn't plentiful enough. Your resources are limited. And beyond that, your mind has become the true limiter, as you can no longer see outside of the cage that you've built for yourself over the last few decades. You're a shell of who you could have been. You're unable to do what you want with who you want because you're 65 now, and your opportunities for networking, for new friendships, meeting people with shared values and ideals in this stage of your life are going to be slim to none. You're able to do most things whenever you want, but remember, you're limited in what you can do. You don't have the money or resources to do whatever you want. You simply no longer have the strain of needing to work for money. And lastly, you're not able to create whatever you want, however often you want, because your resources, money, and influence are all lacking, as you've spent the last 4 decades pursuing the wrong thing rather than focusing right now on beginning to build a life in which you can do or create whatever it is that your soul might desire with whoever it is that your soul might desire, whenever your soul might desire to do so. You focused on what society told you was your best option for achieving freedom without ever questioning what actually is freedom. So you see, this book, Killing Sacred Cows, there's nothing magic about it. You don't need to go buy it and read it. I simply called this book into my life at a pivotal time when I was truly ready for the information. Some of you listening to this right now may be ready for this exact piece of information at this exact time in your journey, which is why I'm sharing this. Others of you will likely be triggered and project in the comments about how amazing your IRA is, or how you're a millionaire from saving, or how this isn't realistic advice for most people. And to that, I wish you well. Once again, I have no personal dog in the fight. I'm simply sharing my viewpoints, what I have come to learn, and the path that I chose to walk that seems to have worked out pretty damn well. What each of you do is your own karma and your own soul's self-actualization path. I share the work that I share because I know that there are a lot more people out there just like me who just don't fit in to the system, who know that something is off and never felt right playing the typical games that everyone else is playing, or following the typical straight and narrow path that everyone else seems to be following. There's a reason you've likely always felt like the black sheep throughout your life. Today's topic is no different. We have a society of people who are drinking the Kool-Aid, and then we have a select percentage, a select minority who's living completely opposite of this path. You could call them the 1%. I am simply here to expand your awareness as to there being other ways that you can approach your wealth and freedom goals. I'm assuming if you're watching this, you desire financial freedom, but not just financial freedom. You likely also desire time freedom, decision-making freedom, what we could refer to as autonomy, spiritual freedom, and so on. So I want you to take a moment to honestly ask yourself something. No judgment, just an awareness exercise. Maybe journal on it. How aligned is my current approach or plan to achieving financial freedom for myself and my family with all of the areas that I desire freedom in? I'll say that one more time. How aligned is my current approach or plan to achieving financial freedom with all of the areas that I desire freedom in? Because remember, it is not just about financial freedom at a future timeline. there's likely other areas that you're actually desiring freedom in that you're not considering in your plan. This is very important to ask yourself and really get clear on, because our society loves to unconsciously instill in us that we have to choose between different areas of our life that we value, X or Y. You can have love in your life or money, not both. You can have financial freedom or time freedom, not both. From this level of consciousness, we fail to question the assumptions baked into the retirement trap. Why am I sacrificing 3 of the 4 areas out of our freedom definition that we talked about today for money, aka fiat debt notes, that I won't even be able to access until I'm at least 65 years old? Why am I trading my time and my autonomy and who I spend my best years with and what I can create in this life for fiat debt notes that I can spend in hopefully 30 years? Asking and journaling on and meditating on these types of questions is going to start to unravel a thread. And if you keep pulling on this thread, there is no end to the level of depth that it will take you to if you have the eyes to see and the heart to listen. So what's the alternative? Better yet, why don't I simply share what I did and the changes that I made when I had this epiphany living with my mom at 24? So first off, I ripped up those contracts and closed the self-employment IRA immediately. And I completely changed my path from that day forward. True story. It was just like that. I just ripped it up. That was it. I had this shift. It was very apparent to me, and I just never looked back. It was one of those fork in the road moments. I had been praying for clarity on what to do to God for months, and he couldn't speak through my mom. He couldn't speak through my friends. He couldn't speak through the fiduciary because none of them had been where I was going. So instead, God spoke to me in the form of a book. And I've come to learn that God often speaks to us in the form of symbols, random people, or even inanimate objects. Rarely is it a literal voice. And I wonder if God may be giving you any direct messages through me or this video today. Killing Sacred Cows talked a lot about cash flow and building up your monthly income to the point where you get to experience a retirement level lifestyle now. And this wasn't about optimizing for pleasure or living a hedonistic lifestyle in the present moment, if that's what you're thinking. It's way deeper than that. It's really an entirely different mindset about what money is and the relationship you have with money. For example, let's ask a simple question for a thought exercise. What is the point of wealth? Think about it. Come up with your own answer. What is the point of wealth? Me, up until I read this book and had this clarity come from God, my answer was, the point of wealth is to delay gratification and live below your means until you have mega millions. Me, after reading this book and having this clarity come through, the point of wealth is to create and embody your ideal life in all areas, a key piece of your soul's self-actualization. Completely different realities, right? One of them is looking at life and money and the journey as if there's an end destination, which we all know is a trap. It's an illusion. The other is looking at it as a journey, a spiritual journey, a self-actualization journey, in which money, aka wealth, is synonymous with self-actualization or self-realization. And I really took this awareness to heart. And so I went on a mission to master business I started scaling my business, scaling other businesses, and then eventually the investing and the tax sheltering pieces came in, of course. But the fundamental shift was starting to focus solely on cash flow today rather than being a cheap-minded person and focusing on net worth tomorrow. I know this sounds simple, but it's fundamentally 180 degrees backwards from how 99% of people think about wealth. And I suppose that's probably why there's a 1%. So let me give you a few examples just for the sake of awareness and clarity. The 1% sell shares. The 99% buy shares. The 1% build products. The 99% buy products. The 1% creates. The 99% consumes. The 1% builds a life that has it all. The 99% accepts a life of sacrifices or trade-offs. The 1% focuses most heavily on cash flow. The 99% focuses most heavily on savings and reducing expenses. The list goes on and on, but hopefully this is enough to highlight the foundational difference in money mindset and paradigm. I was still the latter in these examples when I was first exposed to this type of information. So I went on a quest to change that. I was committed to living a 0.01% life in all areas, not just wealth, but health, relationships, my marriage, my mission and purpose, my spirituality and connection to God, my friendships, my relationship to myself, my service to humanity, and so on. And so from that lens, it is extremely misaligned to play the game of work a job, max out my 401k, try to speed up my retirement as much as I can, and eventually enjoy life. Because that is not optimizing for really any of the areas that I just named. Yet we don't even consider that because we haven't questioned what freedom really is. In my situation, it would have looked more like focusing on maxing out my self-employment IRA, keeping my expenses as low as possible, saving as much as I can, paying my taxes like a good little citizen, and hoping I get to one day actually live. And so when I talk about the 401k scam, this is why. I'm not speaking from a place of, look how smart I am, look how stupid you are. I did it too. I was lining up into the slaughterhouse as well. It's just that I turned around. It's not that you're a bad person. It's not that you're stupid. It's not that I'm better than you. None of those things are true. It's just a misalignment issue. Your soul desires one thing, and your mind, your intellect, has decided on a totally different path. And so your heart and your head are at odds with one another. There is incoherence. And this creates suffering. This creates dis-ease, underlying states of anxiety, angst, apathy, and depression that we as a society have grown to normalize. But they're not normal. There is likely nothing wrong with your brain or your body. You're just living in a way in which you're betraying yourself, and your body and mind are trying to communicate with you. Your soul is trying to communicate with you. Wake up. Your emotions are signals. They're literally chemical messengers trying to get you to make changes in your life. They're not there as an annoyance that you should take a pill to suppress and get to go away. They're trying to tell you that the way you're living your life is not in alignment with what you came here to do. You know damn well you didn't come here to slowly accumulate material fiat debt notes so that you can hopefully relax in a few decades. That makes zero sense for anyone with even an ounce of spiritual intelligence or awareness. We know all of that. Somewhere inside of you, you know that. Yet, when we look at our lives, there's an incongruence between our soul's knowing and the way that many of us are living our lives and what we're choosing to participate in. So the question is, why? Well, programming, largely. You likely haven't taken enough time and space for yourself to really get clear on what this life is really all about, what you're here to explore or learn as a soul, and what freedom is to you specifically. Not me, not what I said in this video, not what your mom and dad said, not what your friends expect from you, but you, truly. If you haven't ever spent a few hours to sit down, clear your schedule, meditate, go inwards, and really get clear on exactly what freedom looks like to you. And I can assure you, in the hundreds and hundreds of students I have personally walked through this exercise, I have never seen someone have an answer come through that sounds like unbound freedom. To me, looks like having an amazing IRA or 401k. Never seen that come through when they truly let their heart speak. There's a level of depth that's lacking. Forget about the matrix. Forget about your oppressors. Forget about this notion of they who are pulling all the strings and it's their fault. That's not what this video is about. This is just between you and God. No one is making you live the life that you're living, my friend. Hate to break it to you. You may feel like you aren't in control of your own life. You may feel like you're a victim to circumstances, but on a soul level, above all that shit, you know damn well that you are choosing the life that you currently have in every single moment. And when you can understand that and not fight that, you can then realize that you now can unlock the gift of choice. You can choose a new life. You can choose a new way of being, just like that. If you don't learn to become your own financial advisor, and you don't learn how to not need to rely on an index or an ETF or an IRA basket for your investments, you can't be upset with the extremely mediocre results that you're going to see with that approach. There's a reason that founders, entrepreneurs, investors, capitalists, and so on do not use these financial products. They typically aren't going to tell you that, but these products are made for the middle class, by the upper class. I didn't make the rules. Winning at the game of money and freedom starts with doing things that 99% of people just aren't doing. And that applies in the financial realm especially. I trust that today's teaching spoke to the part of you that is able to receive this deeper message underlying this topic, and that you don't waste your energy trying to shoot the messenger. I am here to help you. I'm not the enemy, but I'm also not naive to the reality that I cannot truly help anyone. It is you who must help you. Sometimes that happens through another person, but ultimately we are our own saviors. And we will catch y'all in our next video. Peace and love.